For years, a war has raged between the humanoid species blessed by the god of light and the demons of the god of darkness. And after a long and deadly battle, a group of heroes have finally made it to the demon lord's castle to put a stop to this. However, along the way there were several casualties, and right outside the throne room, the team is attacked by a demon baddie. Theron tells Kyle and Urza to go on without and while he handles the demon on his own, so they continue moving, but they both know Theron isn't making it out of that alive. They make their way into the throne room, but all of a sudden Kyle is attacked by several spheres of dark matter from above. He's able to block a few of them, but he can't handle this many, so the mage Urza jumps in front of him to block the shot, but in the process she is completely disintegrated. After Urza's death, the demon lord finally shows himself because he is ready to battle Kyle to the death, and the hero is so enraged that he charges in head first without thinking. The demon lord launches more dark matter blasts at Kyle, and luckily he manages to duck behind a pillar to avoid getting hit. But after seeing what the attack did, he is starting to get worried. The attack the demon lord used is called Elimination, an unblockable high-level spell that destroys everything it comes into contact with. As long as the demon lord possesses magic like that, Kyle will never be able to get close enough to land a significant blow, so he has no choice but to do something risky. He believes he should be able to take the demon lord out if he releases all the energy in the magic gem of his sword, but doing so is so dangerous that he likely won't survive. He is well aware of the risks, but he has no choice, so he releases the full power of the sword and charges forward to break through the demon lord's defenses. With the extra boost in power, Kyle is able to stab clean through the demon lord's body and completely destroy him. But in the process, Kyle's sword is completely destroyed and he is severely injured. He managed to save the world, but in the process he lost everyone he swore to protect in the first place. His friends, his family, and even his home were all destroyed by the demons, so he doesn't feel like he won at all. A few moments later, Kyle collapses from his wounds and he is okay with his impending death because he has nothing left to live for. But suddenly the demon lord's magic gem returns and the power inside it is beginning to overload. With the demon lord gone, there is no one to control its power, and if that thing goes out of control, then it could destroy the entire world. Kyle crawls his way over to the gem in an attempt to stop it from exploding, and as soon as he grabs hold of it, he gets caught up in a flash of bright light. The next time he opens his eyes, Kyle finds himself in his childhood bed, and he is extremely confused because this shouldn't be possible. He gets out of bed and walks over to the window thinking this must be a dream. But sure enough, when he looks outside, he sees his hometown in all its glory, the same hometown he once watched burn to the ground after a demon attack. The sight brings a tear to his eye, but after everything he has been through, he still can't accept that this is reality. Just then, his childhood friend Liz comes into the room looking for Kyle, and as soon as he sees her, he freezes up. Liz notices that Kyle is acting strange, so she asks him if everything is all right, but he doesn't say a word. He still believes all this is just a hallucination, but at this point he doesn't care. He's just happy to see Liz again, so he hugs her as tight as he can. Liz gets flustered and asks Kyle what he's doing, but Kyle is too stuck in the moment to respond. She tries to pull away from him, but Kyle doesn't let her go, so they both lose balance and end up falling onto the bed. Now that Kyle is on top of her, the tension is palpable and he is ready to go all the way. But at this point in time, Kyle and Liz don't have that kind of relationship yet, and after everything he has done, her embarrassment has officially turned to anger, so she pushes him away and punches him so hard that he flips through the air 3 times. Kyle is now writhing in pain on the bed and Liz yells at him for trying to pull something like that with no warning. She doesn't know what's wrong with him today, and she normally wouldn't be so angry because she likes him too, but she'd appreciate a little heads up next time so she can be emotionally prepared. Liz then storms out of the room, leaving Kyle to think about what he has done. But while Kyle is thinking, he realizes that he actually felt Liz's punch and it hurt a lot. If this were really a dream, then he shouldn't be able to feel pain at all, so there's a possibility that this is the real world. Kyle then gets up to lift the sheets off, and to his surprise, he sees the demon lord's magic gem lying there, so he now knows for certain that this is the real world. He walks over to the mirror to take a proper look at himself, and he realizes he looks a lot younger than he did before. On top of that, he clearly remembers suffering several fatal injuries after the battle with the demon lord, yet now his body is perfectly healthy. Furthermore, his hometown is back to normal and Liz is alive, so he comes to the conclusion that he must have returned to the past somehow, and the only clue he has in regards to the cause is this magic gem. He knows the demon lord's magic power was immense, but even then, a spell that allows you to return to the past should be impossible to create. Just then, Kyle's stomach growls because he hasn't eaten yet, so he heads downstairs to get some food. When he walks into the kitchen, he is surprised to find a full meal laid out for him, and he realizes that Liz must have made it for him before she left. He remembers how Liz would often come over to cook for him since he and his mom never had the time, and he is very grateful for her help. He sits down and pulls out a bowl to taste the food, and he absolutely loves it. It has been years since he has gotten to eat proper food since on the battlefield. He had to survive off calorie rations in the middle of nowhere. A few minutes later, Theron comes downstairs because he's hungry too, but once he sees all the empty plates in front of Kyle, he realizes he was too late. Kyle even finished the entire pot of stew too, and while Theron is complaining about all the food being gone, Kyle thinks about how absurd this whole thing is. Up until a moment ago, the two of them were fighting alongside one another against the Demon Lord, but he ended up sacrificing himself so Kyle could finish their mission. Theron notices Kyle staring at him, so he turns around and asks him if something is wrong. Kyle snaps out of it and says he's alright, but he still doesn't know how far into the past this is, so he asks Theron what year this is. Theron is a little confused since that's an odd question to ask, but he tells Kyle that today is the 24th of May in the year 2823. Kyle can't believe what he just heard, so he asks Theron if he's sure that's today's date, and Theron tells him he is serious. Today happens to be Kyle's birthday, so Theron says he will forgive him for finishing all the food, but he is still starving, so he plans to go get something to eat from Liz. Although he's probably going to have to get down on his knees and beg before she'll agree to feed him. Something like this is pretty normal for Theron since there's no such thing as pride when it comes to food for him. But while he's doing that, Kyle stays in the kitchen because he has to put some serious thought into his next move. If he really has returned to the past, then he's going to need to talk to his mom about this. He heads out to the shed and goes down into the library to find his mom, and when he finally spots her, he's happy to see her again, but he can't get the image of her brutal death in the future out of his mind. His mom is surprised to see him because Kyle never comes down into the library at night, but he points out that it's already morning, so she must have spent the entire night reading without realizing it. She apologizes for spending so much time down here, but that's not why Kyle came. He tells her he actually has a question about magic theory, and as one of the few archmages in the country, he figured she'd be the best person to ask. His mom says she'll gladly listen to his question, so Kyle asks her if there are any spells in the world that can send a person back in time. Kyle's mom answers, saying spells like that do exist, and he is surprised because he has never heard of a time spell before. His mother goes on to explain that not much is known about time magic, and while they know it exists, no one would be able to use it. The reason the spell can't be used is because it requires an unfathomable amount of magic power, so there isn't a mage in the world who could possibly pull it off. And even if the greatest mage in all of history were to attempt the spell with every ounce of magic in their body, they would barely be able to travel a single second back in time. Kyle asks if it would theoretically be possible to travel years back in time with the help of a magic item, and now that his mom thinks about it, using a magic item to store power would make time travel possible. But it would take over 1,000 years to store that much energy, so she doesn't think it would work. Kyle asks her if it would be possible for someone to use the forbidden rite, but his mother is more concerned about how he knows of that spell in the first place. Kyle makes up an excuse and says he just read about it in a book and he'd never even dream of attempting it. His mom is relieved to hear that, but the reason she was so worried is because the forbidden rite is a spell that allows one to sacrifice life force in exchange for magical power, so it's very dangerous. But even if someone were crazy enough to use it, she still doesn't think it would be possible to use time travel magic effectively. You would need to sacrifice the lives of half of all the humanoids on the continent to pull something like that off. And as far as she knows, there's no one capable of such an atrocity. Besides, there's no catalyst in existence that's capable of storing that much magic power in the first place. But if an artifact like that does exist, then it'd probably be recorded in this book. Kyle's mom flips through the pages of the book, and once she finds what she's looking for, she shows it to Kyle. It's a section about the legendary divine dragon's heart. It is said that the ancient kingdom of Zarls was able to prosper for thousands of years thanks to the power stored inside the gem, but eventually the gem's power was depleted, leading the kingdom to ruin. Kyle's mom believes an artifact as powerful as the dragon heart would be able to store enough power to make time travel possible, but it's been missing for over 1,000 years, so it's possible that it has fallen into the hands of the demons by now. Kyle is starting to piece together what happened, as it's evident that the gem he got from the demon lord must have been the dragon's heart. Kyle's mom thinks it's nice that the two of them are spending time together again because she was worried he has been avoiding her. Kyle apologizes and says he wasn't doing it on purpose, but his mom isn't really mad about it. She's just happy that he came to see her today, and for some reason she gets the feeling that Kyle is acting a little more mature than usual. Anyway, she remembers Liz saying she'd come over to cook for them today, so she asks Kyle if he wants to go upstairs to eat. But before she leaves, Kyle tells her he actually already ate all the food, and with that single sentence, all the motherly love she felt towards him vanishes for a split second. A moment later, she regains her composure and tells him it's alright since today is his birthday, but she's not going to get him a gift anymore. Talking to his mom was really helpful because Kyle got a lot of useful information from her. But the fact that this thing is the divine dragon's heart and that the demon lord most likely pre-programmed the spell into it to send himself back in time. But Kyle still doesn't understand what the demon lord would want to go back in time for. Just then, Liz walks up to Kyle, and as soon as he notices her, he begins apologizing for what he did this morning. He tells her he only did it because of a bad nightmare he had, so Liz asks what kind of dream it was. Kyle admits that part of the dream involved her dying, and she now understands why he suddenly hugged her like that. Liz smiles and says she's willing to forgive him since it wasn't his fault, but seeing her smile like that only reminds Kyle of everything he's going to lose in the future. Their village is the closest to the demon territory, so once the invasion begins they will be the first to suffer the demon's attack. The village ended up being burnt to the ground and Liz was killed in the chaos of it all. So from that moment on, Kyle swore that he would avenge her. But now she's sitting right in front of him, as alive as ever. Liz asks Kyle if something is wrong since he suddenly got all quiet, but he is deep in thought because if he doesn't do something soon, then 3 years from now he is going to lose everyone he loves again. He refuses to let things end the same way, so no matter what it takes, he swears to himself that he will change the future and save everyone from their cruel fate. Kyle needs to be ready for the day of the Great Cataclysm 3 years from now, so the next day he begins his training and creates a mental image of the demon lord to fight against. He charges forward at the mental image, but after countering a few attacks, he realizes his body is weak as hell compared to how it was before. Although it's kind of expected since by this point in time, Kyle had been living like a certified bum for years, so his combat ability absolutely sucks. However, he seems to have retained his increased magic stats from the future, so he tries to make up for the lack of strength by casting speed and strength enhancement on his body, but unfortunately that doesn't do much to fix his uncoordinated body, so he still fails instantly. Kyle realizes that he needs to put in a lot of work to make his body strong enough to handle his magic power, so he is determined to continue his training. Meanwhile, Liz and Theron have been spying on him from the bushes, and from their perspective, Kyle has just been yelling and falling over by himself all morning, so they are starting to get seriously worried. Just then Theron's mom, Layla, shows up and she wants to know what the two of them are up to. They both explain that Kyle has been working really hard lately, which is weird since a few days ago he couldn't care less about his training. Layla has no idea what caused such a drastic change in Kyle, but if she had a guess she thinks he might be doing it for a girl he likes. Hearing the crush is Liz's hopes since Kyle hasn't confessed to her or anything, so she assumes he must have fallen in love with someone else and proceeds to shake him out of anger, causing him to throw up. Liz realizes she took things too far, so to make up for shaking the vomit out of Kyle, she prepares his favorite meal for lunch. Kyle is still upset about being shaken like that for no reason, but he's willing to let it go since she apologized. Anyway, since everyone is here, Kyle tells them he has a question he'd like to ask. He wants to know the best way to force multiple nations to take action, and everyone is a bit confused since it's an odd question to ask at dinner. But his mom put some thought into it, and there are a few ways he can force nations into action. One would be to get the kings on his side or to become an influential figure like a priest or a hero. But if all else fails, he could always grow a mustache and commit war crimes to get the nation's attention. Kyle thanks his mom for the advice, but he needs to rally the nation's leaders within the next 2 years, and of all the options she has given, the only thing he can feasibly accomplish before then is to become a great hero. Kyle heads to his room and immediately starts reading every book available to plan out his path, and knowing what's coming in the future is really helpful here since he can confirm which legends are true. Just then Theron comes in to see him, and he's amazed to see Kyle so focused on reading. He sits on the bed and asks if Kyle is really serious about becoming a hero since it's not exactly a job title that you can just apply for, but Kyle is already aware of that. Normally someone would become a hero by slaying a demon king or something along those lines, but Kyle can't do that yet, so he needs to make preparations. It's a given that all heroes need to have incredible strength, but strength alone won't be enough to get the job done. To put it bluntly, Kyle says he needs to get a lot of money. That doesn't sound like a very heroic goal to Theron, but Kyle is completely serious. As a hero, he can't go around accepting rewards for his heroic deeds, but equipment and traveling costs are pretty expensive, so he's going to need a decent bit of money saved up if he's going to pull this off. Aside from that, he also plans to gain favor with as many influential people as possible to raise his notoriety, but this is starting to sound like Kyle is trying to become a politician instead of a hero. Aside from money and connections, Kyle also says he's going to need a lot of luck because heroes need to show up at the right place and time when things go wrong. Theron is starting to get worried that Kyle might really be taking the mustache route, but Kyle assures him that he doesn't plan to create any problems just so he can save the day, but he won't deny that he plans to use underhanded tactics to achieve his goals. Theron really doesn't think a hero should be saying stuff like that, but while they're both here anyway, he asks Kyle why he wants to become a hero. He can tell that being a hero is more like a stepping stone towards an end goal for Kyle, so he wants to know what that end goal is. Kyle admits that he does have his reasons for wanting to be a hero, but he can't share that information right now, so Theron is just going to have to trust him on this. The next morning, Kyle talks to Layla and informs her that he will be going out on an adventure soon, and Layla thinks it's a good idea since it's important to go out and learn of the world. She asks Kyle if he has told his mom yet, and Kyle has already talked to her about it this morning, although he hasn't gotten a chance to talk to Liz yet. Since Kyle will be gone for a while, Layla tells him to take Theron with him. Kyle already intended to have Theron come along, so he thanks Layla for permitting him, but this is the first time Theron is hearing of any of this. After that, Kyle goes to talk to Liz and tells her he will be leaving in 2 days. She seems upset that he will be leaving, but she doesn't want to stop Kyle from reaching his goal, so she asks him where he is going. Kyle tells her that his first stop will be the royal capital Malad, and once he gets what he needs from there, the real work begins. Liz suddenly says she has a figure to ask, but Kyle already knows what she's going to say, so he tells her he can't let her come with him. She asks him why she can't come even though Theron is going with him. She's been training hard with the Oracle Warriors, so she assures him that she won't be a liability. Kyle says he just wants to be sure that she's in a safe place, and Liz is about to argue. But before she can say another word, Kyle kisses her and says that when he returns she will be the first person he visits, so he just needs her to have some faith in him. Liz was so flustered by the kiss that she can't argue anymore, so instead she tells Kyle that as long as he promises he won't do anything reckless out there, she is willing to wait for him. The next day, Kyle needs to go shopping for supplies for his trip, so he asks Liz to come with him. But while they are both in town, Liz spots an elf over by one of the stalls. Liz is intrigued because it's unusual to see an elf in this part of the country, but Kyle is even more intrigued because this isn't just any elf, it's Urza. Kyle recalls all the time he spent with Urza in the future and how she loved him so much that she told him her true name, which is a really big deal among elves. He is so stunned by the sight of her that he accidentally blurts out her name, Excess. But he probably shouldn't have done that since in this time, Urza has no idea who he is, so the fact that a random human knows her true name puts her on edge and she's about to draw her sword on Kyle. Kyle doesn't want Urza to make a scene, so he grabs her arm and tries to get her to calm down, but nothing is working, so he's forced to use her true name to put her to sleep. Urza then falls into Kyle's arms, and that takes care of one problem, but now Kyle has to deal with Liz, who saw the whole thing. Kyle says he has a perfectly good explanation for this. From Liz's perspective, he just walked up to a pretty elf girl, put her asleep in the middle of the street, and is now probably going to kidnap her, so he can't really talk his way out of this. After taking Urza back to his house, he tries convincing her that she imagined him saying her true name, but she isn't dumb enough to fall for that. She knows she heard him say it, but the only people who are supposed to know her true name are her parents, so she demands to know where Kyle learned it. Kyle can't exactly explain that 4 years from now, he and Urza become lovers, and she eventually tells him her true name, and even if he did, there's no way she would believe him. Urza threatens to kill Kyle to make sure he doesn't tell anyone her true name, but Kyle asks her to please wait because he will explain everything to her eventually. Urza can't believe Kyle is asking her to trust him with something as important as her true name, so Kyle offers an alternative. He says he is willing to perform an application of the contract with Urza to prevent him from using her true name for evil. Contracts like these are usually formed between humans and spirits, but in special cases it can be used to bind two people together. The terms of this contract will be that Kyle isn't allowed to reveal Urza's true name to anyone or use it for your purposes, and if he breaks the terms at any point, then he will immediately die a painful death. Urza is surprised that Kyle is willing to stake his life on this, so she decides to trust him for now, but she currently isn't able to form a contract since she would need a full moon for that, and the next full moon is in 3 weeks, so she says she'll have to stay in town to keep an eye on Kyle until then. However, Kyle tells her that he's actually leaving town tomorrow, so Urza is forced to join him on his journey since she can't risk letting him out of her sight. The next day, everyone has packed their stuff and they are about to set out, so Kyle says goodbye to his mom. Liz is also going to be joining Kyle now because she doesn't trust him enough to let him travel alone with Urza after how weird he started acting when he first saw her. The group eventually begins their journey, and Theron almost immediately starts flirting with Urza since he wasn't expecting such a pretty girl to randomly join their party. However, Urza insists that she isn't a part of their party, she's just coming along because she has to stay near Kyle until they've formed their contract, but no one's actually listening to her. Anyway, with Urza and their party, Kyle says they don't need to head to the royal capital right away anymore. Instead, they are headed for the Sunguard Mountains to find the Magic Queen's labyrinth. Theron doesn't think it's worth going since they've all heard the legends and that labyrinth is so large that they'll never be able to find the treasure in there. Kyle assures them that they don't have to worry about that because he gets prepared a detailed map to lead them through the labyrinth. Kyle made the map using the memories of his adventure through the labyrinth in the future, but since the labyrinth is still uncharted territory at this point in time, the others find it hard to believe that Kyle managed to get his hands on a genuine map, so they think he got scammed. Urza feels kind of bad for Kyle, so she makes up something about the paper being 1,000 years old magic tree paper to make it sound more genuine. Kyle most definitely got that paper from some random book in the library, so he knows Urza is just BSing, but the others don't know that, and they trust Urza's work a lot more than Kyle's, so they immediately believe that the map is real. But even with the map, the labyrinth is still so big that it will take them ages to get to the treasure. However, Kyle has already thought of a solution for that as well, so he tells everyone they're going to dig a tunnel. They begin preparations on the tunnel right away, and with this, they should be able to avoid all the deadly saw traps laid out across the labyrinth. It even got Urza helping out with an earth spirit to reinforce the tunnel so it doesn't collapse, and she seems really motivated for some reason, so she urges Kyle and Theron to work even harder. After a long day of digging, everyone heads back to camp where Liz has prepared a delicious meal for them. Everyone loves the food, so Liz tells them they can have as much as they like. After all, she had a lot of ingredients to work with. Urza asks Liz if she was the one who caught the bear because she didn't think Liz was proficient with weapons. But Liz never said she used a weapon, she just beat the bear to death with her bare hands, something that's completely normal for her. After dinner, Urza uses some of her spirit magic to create an artificial hot spring in the middle of the mountain, so she and Liz take a soak in it, and while they're in there, Kyle has to do everything within his power to stop Theron's degenerate but from jumping over the wall to peep. The next day, everyone gets back to working on the tunnel, but while the others are on their break, Urza approaches Kyle and demands to know why he wants to become a hero so badly. She knows the others haven't been prying for answers from him because they trust his judgment, but Urza doesn't trust him at all. She wants to know what's driving him to work so hard because no ordinary person would go so far just to become a hero. This entire time while working on the tunnel, Kyle has been wearing rings that make his body 9 times as heavy as usual, and he hasn't once stopped or complained. She asked if his reasons for doing all this have anything to do with how he knows her true name, but before Urza could get a response, Kyle's shovel strikes the wall of the treasure vault, so he cuts Urza off and asks her to go get the others. Once everyone has arrived, Kyle kicks down the wall and they are greeted by a massive pile of treasure. Theron is overjoyed because with this amount of money, he's never going to have to work again, but while he is busy swimming through the gold coins, Kyle sneaks off on his own because there's a secret treasure hidden in this labyrinth that he needs to find. He makes his way over to one of the back rooms, and there he finds the legendary sword that accompanied him in so many battles in the future. And as he approaches the blade, the sword's avatar appears. That brings the episode to an end. Thanks for watching. Want next part? Subscribe the channel and turn on notification bell.